Welcome. So what if I told you that divine mercy wasn't just some abstract feeling, but a spiritual system, one with its own set of rules and protocols? Well, today we're going to break down a really fascinating teaching that presents it in exactly that way. So let's get right to the heart of it with this question. Is divine mercy an emotion, or is it a system? Is it just a random feeling of pity, or is there a predictable, dependable process at work? The source material we're digging into today argues hard for the second one, and that's the big idea we're going to unpack together. And here's how we're going to do it. First, we'll look at mercy as a bigger spiritual concept. Then, we'll dive into this pretty stark contrast between the natures of God and man. After that, we'll get a clear definition of what divine mercy actually is. And this is the big one. We'll uncover the one crucial condition for receiving it. And finally, we'll check out the benefits. So let's get into it. All right, first up, mercy as a spiritual concept. The argument here is that a lot of people might misunderstand mercy because we tend to think of it as just a feeling, a wave of compassion. But this teaching suggests it's much more structured than that. It's a system with actual principles. And here's the real kicker. The teaching basically says you can't really benefit from a system you don't understand. In other words, you can't stumble into mercy out of sheer ignorance. Knowing how it works, why it works, that knowledge is presented as the key that unlocks all the freedom and benefits that come with it. So, to really get why mercy is even necessary, this teaching first sets up a fundamental conflict. It's this huge contrast, a real chasm, between the essential nature of God and the nature of man in what it calls a fallen state. And wow, when you see them side by side like this, it is pretty stark. On one hand, you have the nature of God, described as pure love, gracious, compassionate, slow to anger, full of mercy. And on the other hand, you have the nature of man, described as having a deceitful, desperately wicked heart. It's this deep opposition that really creates the need for something like mercy in the first place. To really drive this point home, the teaching points to Scripture, like this quote from Jeremiah. The idea here is that the problem isn't something external, like our circumstances. It's an internal problem, deep within the human heart. And that's exactly why an external solution, a divine intervention like mercy, is presented as being so essential. So, if we've got this great divide, what could possibly bridge it? Well, that brings us right to our next section. What is divine mercy? In this framework, it's presented as the bridge, the solution designed specifically to cross that gap between those two natures. So what exactly is mercy? Well, at its core, the definition is actually pretty simple. It's any action that is motivated by compassion. Now, that's a really crucial distinction. Mercy isn't the feeling of compassion itself, it's the fruit of compassion. Compassion is the root, mercy is the action that grows out of it. It's what you do about the feeling. And this action isn't one size fits all. It's shown to have two different dimensions. The first is pardon. This is for offenders. It's about forgiveness and holding back punishment that's deserved. But then there's the second dimension, support. This is for the inadequate, for those in pain. It's about providing relief. So you can see, it covers both people who's done wrong and people who are just plain struggling. Okay, this brings us to what is, without a doubt, the most critical piece of this entire spiritual system. We're talking about the condition for mercy. The source is crystal clear that this powerful system isn't just activated randomly. There's one very specific prerequisite. You could call it an access key. And that one single condition is brokenness. The teaching argues really emphatically that this is the spiritual state God has to find before the whole system of mercy can even kick into gear. Without brokenness, mercy simply isn't administered. So what on earth is brokenness in this context? It's really important to get this right. It's not about self-pity or self-hatred. It's defined as a two-step mental and spiritual process. First, it's a realization, an honest look in the mirror. And second, it's an acknowledgement, actually admitting your limitations and your total inability to succeed without God's help. It's a posture of complete dependence. And the perfect example of this, the one the teaching always comes back to, is the story of the prodigal son. He hits rock bottom. He's starving, and he has that moment of realization when he says, "Father, I'm not even worthy to be your son anymore." That, according to the source, is the absolute picture of brokenness. It's the moment of surrender that unlocks his father's incredible display of mercy. All right, so the condition is met. That posture of brokenness is there. Mercy is administered. What happens next? What's the result?
Well, let's move to our final section and look at the stated benefits, the actual, tangible outcomes when this system is activated. And the source lists some really powerful benefits that are said to flow from this. We're talking about healing, provision, something it calls advantage, which is about rising beyond your natural limits, and then deliverance and restoration. You can see how each one of these is a direct answer to the inadequacies and the needs that state of brokenness admits to. It's a perfect cause and effect.
And that brings us to our final thought for today. What we've looked at here is a framework that presents mercy not as some random act of kindness, but as a direct, divine response to a very specific human posture. So, the question I want to leave you with is this. What does this imply about our own role, our own agency in the process of receiving grace? It's definitely a fascinating way to look at a truly timeless concept.